This is the Solid Signal podcast for the week of January 29th, 2024. The first thing that I want to do, and it may seem a little bit weird, is congratulate the Detroit Lions for valiant play in the first half of the championship game. I'm recording this on a Monday, so for me this was just last night. The trip that the Lions have taken this year to get as far as they did was just amazing, and the kind of football that they played this past, in the first half of the game was absolutely stellar. And that's about all I'm going to say about that. Keep in mind that Solid Signal is located in the suburbs of Detroit, and we're all big Lions fans over here. But moving forward, it now seems that the two teams in red are going to the Super Bowl, which will be held in approximately 2 weeks, in a stadium in Las Vegas, Nevada. And boy, do I have a lot to say about that. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of it, if you have ever been to Las Vegas like me, you probably are shaking your head as to why they put the stadium where it is. It's kind of on the other side of the freeway from the New York Hotel in what is already an extraordinarily busy area. Now, they had the entire Vegas Valley to choose from. They could have put a stadium out in the middle of nowhere and had tons and tons of parking, and run shuttle buses. They could have extended the monorail there. They could have done a lot of things, but instead they put it where everybody already is. And I'm not sure that this was the best move for anybody, but what is done is done. It certainly is a nice looking stadium, and it's got all the modern stuff. So they're unlikely to pick it up and move it at this point. Let me just say that. But that's, the location of the stadium is not the subject of this week's podcast. It's just a little bit of an editorial that I wanted to put out there before I got into the really heavy stuff. The title of this week's podcast is, Does the Super Bowl Even Matter Anymore? I will admit that I thought of this title, shortly after the fourth quarter of the championship game started last night, and it looked little increasingly like the 49ers were going to make it into the Super Bowl instead of the Lions, and so that was kind of the impetus for this. But there's a lot more to it than that. The Super Bowl has historically been the most watched American television program every year. It is where the prices for commercials are the highest. I haven't seen anything telling me what it's going to cost for a minute of airtime this year, but my guess is it's going to cost a lot more than it did last year, and last year was something around $3 million for like a minute of airtime. But people pay it because it's worth it. It's one of the few times where you can actually be relatively guaranteed you're looking at a live audience who's got nothing better to do than stare at your commercials. That was true more or less 100% of the time 40 years ago, and today it's very rarely true. So to have that opportunity to go in front of people and give them that is, I guess it's worth a lot of money. It is. It's worth a lot of money. The Super Bowl tends to appeal at this point to people who have previously not expressed any interest in football. And I think that is more true, I think, today than it has ever been. In fact, I'd say it's very likely that we will see a whole different audience heading toward watching the Super Bowl this year than have watched in previous years. And of course, there's only one reason for that. I will say, I have a lot of respect for Taylor Swift, and I have a lot of respect for everything that she brings to the table, her economic might and her social responsibility and all of that stuff. Nothing but good things to say about her. And also, let's be honest, I think that there were a lot of network advertisers who were rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs for that very reason, because they figured that a lot of new viewers who had never really gone to watching the Super Bowl would actually be watching the game intently this time around. All good, folks. All good. But the question I asked myself last night was, does any of that really matter? Does it move the needle? Does it help the overall economy? Does it help TV providers? Does it help anybody? And, there were a lot of bitter thoughts last night, a lot of sad thoughts last night. And I don't want to get too far into that, but I do want to say that, yes, the Super Bowl does matter. And it matters just precisely because it is such a universally watched television show and it's watched live. And, the Super Bowl has the potential to bring us all together in happiness or shock. Those who will remember the incident of Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson from 20 years ago or so will remember the shock of seeing some stuff live on network television that we're not accustomed to seeing. And at the same time, if you've been watching the last couple of years, there have been some really high quality entertainers out there doing some incredible, incredible work. And, the whole hip hop montage that they did was just, really, really incredible. And a salute, of course, to the new stadium, which is located not that far away from where, West Coast hip hop history began. The Super Bowl is important. It is important because it's a driver of our economy. It's important in that way. And the fact is that there are not always a lot of reliable things that are going to drive the economy. And knowing that you can advertise on the Super Bowl, you're going to see some result from it because millions and millions of people are going to be watching. That is something that you just don't have a guarantee of much anymore. We're a very fractured nation in terms of our audience. And it's very hard to find a place you can advertise to everybody at the same time. It's a great event for not just over-the-air antenna fans, because it is available over the air live, but also pay TV companies like DirecTV and Dish love the Super Bowl because it is still the most reliable way to get that thing. When you talk about, having to scale up the internet capacity so that everybody is watching the Super Bowl at the same time, that's a lot to ask. And if it weren't for pay television, if everybody just had to go to the Paramount app and try to stream it, I think that probably would crash and nobody would see the Super Bowl and nobody would be particularly happy. And that's why pay television is incredibly important. If you are going to watch the Super Bowl, and statistically speaking you are, then watch on pay television because you'll get the best result, by the way. No word yet as to whether Paramount Plus is going to be offering the game in 4K, but DirecTV most definitely will. It will be upscaled 1080p, and I go into some detail on that in an article that you'll see at the Solid Signal blog, but it will still be the best possible quality that you can get when you watch. So it will be available on DirecTV, it will be available on Dish, and that is how I'm asking you to watch it because it will be the most reliable way. You will not see streaming outages. You will not see buffering problems. You will not see problems because your local neighborhood internet provider is oversubscribed. It just isn't going to happen. Go out and watch the Super Bowl if you'd like at your local bar. It's 2024 now, not 2020. We don't tend to want to talk about what 2020 was like. But let's be honest, a lot of bars and restaurants are still in a recovery mode from what they went through in 2020. And I don't want to get too far into that. Like I said, that's all in the past. But if you want to support a local small business, go to a restaurant or a bar, watch the game there, buy something while you're there, buy a drink, buy some food, patronize that business. It's the perfect time to be doing it. And of course, you'll be in a group of people who will be enjoying the game the same as you are. And there's always great benefit to that. The Super Bowl is important because of all of the things that it brings with us in that way. And it's also going to be a big driver of the economy for, the ticket sales and stuff like that too. Although I think that's probably, if you look at the grand scheme of things, is probably less of a driver if you think about it than whatever. It's a way to, I was thinking about this the other day when I was talking to a younger person. It's actually a way for younger people to experience older artists in a way that they never have before. Since the Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake incident, Super Bowls have been playing it relatively safe with their choice of entertainment, and they want to make sure that everything is fine. And I think actually the whole game's now on a delay so that in case something happens, they can kind of cut it out. But this year it's going to be Usher. Now, if you are a little bit older, you probably remember Usher. If you are even a little bit older than that, and I admit that I am, you might not see why Usher is such a big deal. But if your time period is the early 2000s, Usher is one of your big people. But if you are younger than that, you may only know Usher as one of the judges from The Voice, I guess, and not really as a legitimate entertainer in his own right. He's got his own Las Vegas residency for sure, but not everybody's going to go see it. And this is an opportunity for a lot of younger folks who have never really experienced Usher to experience some really, really good music. And we saw this again, we saw, with the hip hop stuff, we saw, every year we see great, great performances from a lot of acts who are not necessarily well known to younger people. And that's a good thing too. Because when it comes to music history, there's, no matter how old you are, there's a tendency to think that, okay, my music is the best music, and music that came before is boring, and music that came after is awful. No matter what your year is, you always feel that way. Pretty much everybody does feel that way. And this is a great opportunity for you to take a look at another era in history, perhaps, and realize that the music was actually pretty good at that time. All in all, I would say the Super Bowl is most important because it's one of those things that just doesn't have a lot of negatives to it. It's a day when we put aside some of the concerns that we may have about the NFL and the way that they're run, about politics and the world around us, just for one day, and there's nothing wrong with doing this, just for one day, all coming together and saying, okay, let's have a sporting competition, let's watch some advertising that is actually worth watching for once a year, and let's be entertained by a halftime show that's been put on by a real quality entertainer with a production value that you are not going to see anywhere else at any time. So as much as I would like to say that the Super Bowl had the Detroit Lions in it, and it doesn't, it's still worth watching. I'll say that to all of my friends, Detroit fans, and I will say it to everybody. Watch the Super Bowl. Take a few minutes out of your day, okay, put the chores off for a little bit and enjoy it. Enjoy it on pay television. And if you do not have pay television, or if your internet needs an upgrade, there's still time. You've got 2 weeks. You've got 2 weeks to get that taken care of. That's enough time to get DirecTV installed. It's enough time to get Dish installed. It may even be enough time to get an internet upgrade. And you can get all of those things, surprisingly enough, with one phone call to Signal Connect. 888-233-7563 is the number. And when you call during East Coast business hours, because remember, we are in the Detroit area, then you will get an expert on the line who will be able to take care of everything you need, whether it's cellular, whether it's internet, whether it's satellite television. No matter what it is, you're going to get it all from one source, and you're going to get the kind of customer service that you are not getting from anybody else. That is the Solid Signal difference. That's why people call us at Signal Connect. Anyway, that's about it for this week's podcast. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Makes me look good to my bosses. As always, shop at solidsignal.com and call Signal Connect at 888-233-7563 for the kind of customer service that you thought was already gone from this world, and it isn't. And I will see you next week on the Solid Signal podcast.